The Clash of Clans developer team have recently shared extensive insights into why they have made certain decisions recently. This was on their Inside the Builder's Hut episode, which I have put together the key takeaways, and I'll also give my thoughts on each of the topics. So David, the product manager for Clash of Clans, was initially asked why at the start of this month did they try and remove the hero skin from the Gold Pass.
Ultimately, we had reason to believe that people do not buy the Gold Pass because of the skin.
So even though they might not buy the Gold Pass because of the skin, it is still value and it has been there all of this time. So trying to take that away and put something in that is of less value is obviously not going to go down well.
And we needed to find out the answer to that question. And the reason that that's important and is in the interest of the players is because if people are buying the skin, they're buying the Gold Pass because of the skin, then that's really useful for us to know, because then that means that the people that are interested in skins in the game is much bigger than we thought. And so when we were prioritizing all the cool things we can do in the game, maybe we prioritize skins a bit higher than other things.
I guess that is useful for them to know, but when he says prioritize skins higher than other things, I'm not sure what else they could do unless they released different types of skins or rarities, because I feel one skin for every hero each month is the ideal cadence. I can't see why they would step that up and provide even more skins.
And on the other hand, if people are not buying the Gold Pass because of the skin, that's also really important for us to know, because that's not good for players that do like skins, because that kind of devalues skins for those group of players.
I do agree on that one, because if they want to push Clash to monetize more through cosmetics, then the exclusivity of a skin or scenery is something that can help with the price point and the value, the perceived value of that item.
And I think it's super important to have that extra context, because one of the things we missed the mark with this whole decision, I think, was that we didn't communicate properly with our players and talk about this. So I think they're all caught by surprise by this decision.
Yeah, I mean, they literally removed it from the pass, put the decoration in there at the same time they announced it. Us creators knew a couple of days ahead of time when we gave feedback, but to the public, the announcement that the skin was going to be removed was literally when it was removed. So if they had have shared that beforehand, it would have allowed them to identify the sentiment of the community and that we didn't think this was a good decision. They would have probably gone ahead with it anyways, because, as David mentioned, they needed to actually definitively find out, and that is where they wouldn't have unless there was a decrease in Gold Pass sales. But it certainly would have came across a lot more transparent in the reasoning why versus just snatching it away.
And I think maybe if we were like more open and transparent from the beginning, things could have been different. So I think it's a great learning for us, and it's something that, of course, we're going to apply in the future decisions. And again, we're doing all of this, again, thinking about the player and what's best, but it doesn't mean we're not going to make wrong decisions sometimes, like the wrong choice. It happens, and that's why we have the players to tell us when we're doing something wrong.
I have to give them credit there, because they owned up to making a mistake. And it's clear, like, everyone makes mistakes from time to time, and the Clash team will make decisions that they think is the right thing to do. But ultimately then, for whatever reason, that they haven't foreseen that it wouldn't go down well with the players. But I do applaud them for acting very fast in recognizing the error, apologizing, and making it right.
Speaking about fixing the issue, we did roll back, and we added the skin back in the past, right?
Yeah.
So could you talk a little bit more about that decision as well as like rolling back?
So we soon found out that actually it seems that maybe the skins were important reason why you buy the Gold Pass. And as soon as we realized that that was the way, then we were no longer working in the best interest of the players. So as soon as we figured that out, we're like, okay, we need to turn this around. And we did. We turned it around straight away. But I want to make clear, though, that the failure was not in the initiative to do this. The failure was in how we executed it. And specifically, because we knew that this would be a controversial thing to do, we should have let the players know well in advance to get the dialogue going, and that's where the failure is. And that's what we apologize for, and that's what we'll do better on in the future. When we realized that this was the wrong move to make, we wanted to more than make up to it, to the players for it. So that skin will remain legendary, and that's why we also added even more things on the silver side of the track, because we really, it wasn't enough for us just to make up for players, just to kind of strike a balance. We wanted more than make up, and that's why that will remain legendary going forward.
And again, I guess you've got to give them applaud there because they did immediately add this hero skin back, and they added starry ore and builder potions as well, even on the free side of the track as well, as David said, to more than make up for it when they realized they made that mistake. So lessons learned from the Clash team for communication and transparency, but we have to give them credit where it's due in that they reverted it very quickly.
Now we're going to talk about you were talking about the decoration, and we know there's also an issue with decoration where to put it because players are running out of space. And it's a big problem because you want to showcase your decorations. You have a lot of cool decorations. So what's the next step here?
This is a tricky one. So there are some maybe obvious solutions for this. We could just increase like the space around the edge of the scenery, and that would give the players more space for decos.
Yeah, I mean, that's something I've seen recommended a lot, but I guess that's a temporary fix. At the rate they are adding decorations, we would just run out of that extra space anyway. They are bringing bigger sceneries, like the legendary scenery. Maybe there's a way of integrating the decos into the scenery where you could show them off, but striking that balance for free-to-play players as well, since they can get quite a few decorations, might then be tricky. So let's see what other solutions David has in mind.
The next solution that there potentially is this like completely separate area. So you have your builder base, clan capital, home village, and then we talked about this sort of sanctuary idea, like the safe place that can't get attacked, but you can store and customize your decos there. And that's a decent idea, but the problem with that is that I think players are really interested in decorating their home village, something that they're kind of more emotionally connected to.
Yeah, because I don't think I would care much about the sanctuary. Part of the decorations is that when someone finds you in multiplayer, maybe they see you have the original Christmas tree. That is cool, and it's the same reason that the custom animation for the legendary scenery is so interesting, because it's tied to your home village where people find you. I'm not sure I would be that big of a fan of a whole separate area to store my decos. I don't think anyone would visit that other than me. But maybe it does actually serve the people that really care about cosmetics. And whether that's a big enough chunk of the player base, I'm not too sure.
So the solution isn't super obvious. I guess if we really think about what the problem is, it's not necessarily that players don't have space in the home village to place their decos, it's that they don't have anywhere to place their decos. They don't even have a place in their like inventory management to have like decos in a nice order. So maybe that's a solution, and maybe that's something that we'll think about going forward.
I think that would be helpful in having better deco management, like in the village layout editor, but I don't think it solves the problem of having too many decorations that you physically can't display them all on your base if you want to. But David was then asked, are there any other controversial changes coming to the Gold Pass?
Ultimately, if we think that there's something, again, in the interest of players, that might be controversial that relates to the Gold Pass. But having said that, there is nothing else planned like that. In fact, anything else we have planned for the Gold Pass is more on the positive side. At the moment, the Gold Pass is like a one pass fits all sort of setup. And we have some changes in mind where we want to, personalize it a bit more, depending on what town hall you're in, depending on how you engage in the game. So this should be a clear positive for the players in terms of the Gold Pass.
That's interesting. I guess it's similar to the special offers in the shop, whereby they're based on your town hall level. But the one thing I would say on that is I hope the value of the Gold Pass is not decreased for lower town hall players. Like, if the rewards are scaled up over for the higher town hall players, then obviously they are getting better value for the pass. So essentially, its value should remain the same for all players.
Okay, so we just released our most majestic cosmetic ever, the legendary scenery.
Legendary scenery
and the
price.
team done an amazing job with the scenery. But we all know it's more on the premium side when it comes to its price. And I would like you to tell us a little bit more why. What was the decision behind this price?
Yeah, so at $32.99 US, not including tax, it's really expensive. There's no other way to put it. And you might be asking, I thought we were talking about doing things in the best interest of players. How is this in the best interest of players? But there is some good intention here. In Clash, we're trying to become more cosmetic focused when it comes to monetization.
And that's good because it keeps the gameplay experience the same for free-to-play players. A cosmetic really just changes up how something looks, whereas if the progression and gameplay is fairer for free-to-play players, then that is a good trade-off.
And the reason we want to do that is because we want to have monetization that is as fair as possible. And fair monetization essentially is monetization that does not alienate the free-to-play player. And cosmetics in that context is really good. So if we think about the different ways we can monetize, it's like just pay to win, and that's something we don't want to do, and I hope the players don't think we do that. There's pay to progress quicker, and that's kind of what we do mostly in Clash. And it's pretty player friendly because when we release new content, everyone gets it. But if you pay, you kind of get first access, early access to it. And in Clash, I think we do a pretty good job of making that fair. But the fairest way to monetize is via cosmetics, because they don't alienate the player at all. They have no impact on gameplay, and it's super fair way to monetize.
Yeah, that's exactly what
and when
I
we
just
think
said.
about like the revenue we make in the game and the split between pay to progress and cosmetics, we want to increase the share that comes from cosmetics, because we believe that this is the most player-friendly way in the long term to monetize, and kind of sets us up nicely to be this game that's around for 30, 40 years and remembered forever.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with all of that. I think the more they can monetize through cosmetics, the better. They're always going to monetize the pay-to-progress side of things. And I also think that's okay as long as it's achievable for a free-to-play player, because if someone wants to progress faster, they're not then time-gated. They can spend the money to progress if they want to. But David also touched upon how often they would release the legendary sceneries.
At the moment, we're thinking like 3 to 4 times max a year. Like, it's really exclusive, and we want the release cadence to reflect that. Because if you're a player and you buy one of these, you may not want to like switch it straight away next month. You might want to hold on to it and like really kind of take it all in.
Yeah, I think that I agree with that. They shouldn't come too often. I never thought about people wanting to use it a little bit more, and I don't know how many people switch out to the new scenery every month when one is released, but I can see where people do that and would want to remain with the legendary scenery. But I also just think, going back to the exclusivity side of things, if you were to release the legendary sceneries in abundance, then they're not special anymore. So you likely wouldn't even be able to drive the price tag that they have on it. That's the reason they can have a high price tag on it, because they've put so much work into it that it really feels special.
Can we expect something similar for skins, like even like top tier above legendary for skins?
Yeah, maybe. Like, we've talked about potentially this sort of mythic tier skin idea. But we'll see how it goes. Like, I think we do have other plans in store for cosmetics, and that might come before that. But if we have the time, we would definitely like to look into a higher tier for skins as well.
I am not sure what they could do to make it mythic. I'm sure they'd have to do something, right? Like, you can see the difference between a normal scenery and a legendary scenery. Maybe it's along the realms of the Golem King, where it changes his appearance so much. But is that really worthy of being a higher tier skin, which they would charge a higher price for? Yeah, I guess we'd have to just see what they come up with, but I wouldn't be against it, again, because of the trying to drive revenue through cosmetics to keep the player experience more fair.
Yeah, I kind of alluded to at the start that we want to do cosmetics that are definitely cheaper if we sell them, or cosmetics we give out to the free-to-play player via engagement.
Good.
And so the one thing we're thinking a lot about now is emotes.
Finally! Wasn't it 2 to 3 years ago now? I bring a video every year on the main channel where I just share what I would like to see in the game that coming year. And I touched upon emotes, and that I think they would just integrate into Clash of Clans perfectly. You could use them in the chat, you could use them with attack replays. Obviously, there'd be a setting where the attacker themselves could switch it off, because it could be really off-putting. But when you have that final war attack, and if your teammate 3 stars, you win the war, emotes would just be perfect.
And not necessarily just emotes in the chat, but emotes like as an attacker, as a defender, you can use emotes in different situations. And this is something that we're kind of really considering. That might be this next step for cosmetics.
Nice.
The benefit of emotes is that you can kind of provide them in abundance. They really are good on the social side. It's like an outlet through which players can, express themselves and communicate with others. So we're really excited about this one. So it's still, we're still talking about it, we're still planning about it, but this could be potentially the next step for cosmetics.
So he obviously says that they're still talking about it, but just looking at his enthusiasm, and the language that he's using, I would not be surprised if we see emotes. We're getting towards the back end of the year, so if they haven't already started working on the system, then maybe not this year. But I'd be highly surprised if we didn't see emotes in 2025 for Clash of Clans, which is great because I think they'd be a brilliant addition.
Okay, so we had an update just now, and now we have a new type of event in the game, the treasure hunt. And with it, we have a new type of reward, which are the chests. And players are already talking about because they contain random rewards and what does that mean? So can you talk to us a little bit more about this new event and this new type of reward?
Randomization is super fun. That's what we think. And players are going to have a lot of fun playing with it. Like Clash,
I think it's great.
For 12 years, essentially has been a game that's been deterministic in terms of reward structure. Like you get what you think you're going to get. And that's, for a strategy-based game, that's good.
That is one thing that up until this point, you've always been able to progress and know across all of the players how quick they are going to progress. Whereas because of the chests, depending on how often we get them, one player might be able to accelerate quicker than another. Now, I'm sure over time, due to drop rates, that would equal out. But earlier on, that could make a big difference on how fast you're able to progress. So the randomness does bring in that element of things. But I think all in all, with the enjoyment we've already seen the chests can be for players, then all in all, I think they're a good thing for the game.
And that's not to say that randomization is going to be everywhere in the game now. It will still predominantly be a game that's based upon deterministic-based rewards.
Good.
Because it's a strategy-based game.
But
we want to sprinkle in a bit of randomization there because we think it's going to be fun for the players.
Cool.
And then in terms of the event itself, the treasure hunt event, we want to be quite careful with how we introduce this new reward type. We don't want to switch things that players already have with this new thing. So that's kind of why we made it a temporary event out of this. And also the mechanic, like the mechanic in the event itself, where the chest is behind one of 3 buildings. We think this could be fun for the players. We want to always try new things to see if the players like it. So we hope the players do like this sort of guess or check which building the chest is behind. And maybe we'll try more new things like that. And that's kind of the thought process behind the event and the rewards themselves. So the current setup of the event is that you get 3 chests. You can get 3 chests every 48 hours. Initially, we talked about doing 3 chests every 24 hours, but we really want to be free to play friendly. We really want to be friendly to the players that maybe don't engage that much. And if we did 3 chests every 24 hours, a lot of those players wouldn't get all the chests. And so we wanted to make it a bit kind of more casual player friendly. And that's why it's 3 chests every 48 hours.
Yeah, I get that. I think for an active player, it can be frustrating waiting of the chests to reset. But on the flip side, I guess that's an indicator that the treasure event is a success, that people are excited about getting the chests. But I do agree that players that just dip in and out, there's a careful balance between making sure we're including those players so they don't feel like they're missing out and not forcing people to be more active, because I think in the long run that might actually just drive people the other way. And we are trying to grow the player base and make sure that, those players that aren't quite as active do continue playing the game in the long run. So I think as a first iteration, the 3 every 48 hours, I'm fine with that.
Let's see how it goes. In the future, we might change that and make it maybe a bit more predominant in these events.
Okay, so it sounds like we might be getting more treasure hunt events in the future as well. I thought they were integrating this to learn about the chests, iterate on them, and bring them to other areas of the game. But if they continue to tweak the treasure event to make it accessible for as many people and as enjoyable for as many people as possible, then that's great.
Many players are already talking about having these type of randomized rewards, or some people call loot box, inside the game, and they're worried about what does this mean for Clash of Clans in the future. Is there anything you can tell us about
this is a big one,
these type of rewards being in the game now? What does it mean for the game?
Yeah. So I just said that randomized rewards are fun and randomization is fun, but I do understand the kind of darker side of it and the connections it has to gambling. And I want to be super clear that the purpose of this is to create more fun in the game. It's not monetization related. And we have no plans to sell these boxes. It's all going to be connected to engagement and events. That's kind of the plan. And maybe we're in other parts of the game, but we do not plan to sell these things for money. Because again, we have to ask yourself the question, if we want to be a game that's around for 20, 30 or 40 more years, does selling loot boxes get us to that place as a strategy-based game? And whatever, maybe the answer to that is no. So there's no plans to sell these at the current moment, at least.
Okay, so I am happy and not happy with that answer. So he did say they have no plans to monetize the chests, which is good. They should not monetize these chests. They are meant as rewards for engagement, and that's how it should stay. But on the same token, he did not say they are not going to monetize the chests. He said, we have no plans. Maybe that's not the right way to go. He didn't say they're not going to monetize them. I'm okay with this answer for the moment. And I agree. I think this does not get them to the place where Clash is remembered in 20, 30 years' time. But he didn't definitively say they're not going to monetize them. And I guess he doesn't want to, like, say something and then have plans change in the future. But I can't see where anyone would think this is a good idea to monetize them.
Pretty sure players would be relieved to hear about this as well. And again, as you said, it's super fun to open a loot box, the chest, whatever you want to call it, and don't know what's inside. And it could be anything of amazing rewards we have. So I think, again, it's just something new and fun to add into the game that's not taking away anything from the players. It's only adding more value to them. Yeah. So it's amazing.
And they're called chests. We actually had a lot of time thinking about what we'd call them. And funnily, we landed on chests because they are chests.
Yeah, and it's a treasure hunt. So it makes sense you're going to buy chests. Yeah, so it's perfect. Yeah. So far, we only have it available during the event, which is great. I mean, I don't understand why. But we have plans on expanding the availability of these chests, where we can find them, other places in the game.
We want to see how this goes. But if it goes well, we would plan to maybe add it to certain different parts of the game. So for example, maybe we add a few to the silver track, maybe we add some to challenge levels.
Challenge level. I've said for a while that the challenge level rewards aren't really good enough. We used to occasionally get books in there, but we very rarely even get a builder potion anymore. So I think if you had, you know, some chests as challenge level rewards, that would be way better.
Come to other places. And maybe we'll make some different types of chests. So maybe we have like event-specific chests where maybe you get the pool is like all temp troops, or maybe like it's cosmetic-specific chests. And these are some of the plans we have going forward.
Oh, that's interesting. So we'd have the core chest types, the common, rare, epic, and legendary, but maybe they'd bring limited edition chests for different events. I do like that idea.
So do we have any more plans for future events? What's next?
Yeah, so like when it comes to events, we want to create give something players to talk about. Like the big moments in the game is when we release new town hall updates. But what happens between those updates? And with events, we want to create like really exciting moments for players in between. We want to create moments that are more social, that are really fun and varied and novel. And we do have some plans. So hopefully by the end of this year, we have something pretty special and unique that could be coming. And then next year, our main focus will be on creating this new social event type. So the last time Home Village has had like a new social event is with Clan Games, and maybe maybe next year something else comes.
Sounds like.
Oh, that's interesting. When did Clan Games get released? Wasn't it 2018 or 19? Oh my gosh, it was even before then. December 2017. So 7 years since a big social feature like that was added to the game. I'll be interested to see what exactly they have in mind. I think the last time a big Home Village feature was released was Clan War Leagues, which I guess they're not classing as a social feature, even though could argue it is. But we are in need of a bigger new game mode, I feel, for the Home Village. But they do have to be careful of not overwhelming people, so I'd be interested to see if this is a permanent thing, whether it's a monthly event. I guess we'll find out next year. But David also touched upon one thing that I skipped through near the start, where he mentioned what the overall aim of Clash of Clans is, like into the future. And I thought it was important to play this.
Clash is a game that's been around for 12 years, and we want Clash to be around for 20, 30, 40 more years. We want Clash to be a game that's remembered forever. And if we don't do things that are in the best interest of players, that will not happen. Our player base will shrink and we'll be a game that's remembered for a couple of decades at most. For us, their player base and growing our player base is the most important thing. And it's more important than monetization. Monetization is important because it allows us to do cooler things in the game for players and incentivizes them to come back next year, next month, next week. And it also allows us to kind of make more players in the world know about Clash. And so it's all with this kind of idea in mind of growing the player base. And so being a game eventually that players will remember forever.
Yeah, so I really like that because he didn't ignore that monetization is clearly a factor that they are aiming for. That's how they're going to be able to continue improving the game. But it is not their North Star, if you will. Growing the player base and making sure that Clash is around for 20, 30, 40 more years and remembered forever is their ultimate goal. And I think that was really nice to hear from David. Next up, we heard about hero equipment from game designer Petri and why some of them were recently buffed and why some of them were recently nerfed.
It was becoming quite clear that the heroes are very strong. Some players were destroying almost the entire base, or in some cases even the entire base, using heroes only without using any troops. So it seemed, from that angle, it seemed quite clear that we want to address the strength of heroes in some cases. We could have like buffed defenses to make the defenses stronger, but one problem with that approach would have been that if we have some players who don't have the maxed out equipment yet, they are on their way there. And if we had buffed defenses, then those players would struggle more in their attacks,
Makes sense.
Yeah.
which we wanted to avoid.
Yeah, so I guess they had no other option. If hero equipment was identified as the problem, then as Petri said, if they buff defenses to counteract that, it really only punishes those players that do not have max level equipment yet, which is a huge proportion of the player base. So the only option was to nerf certain ones that were overpowered, but Petri gives reason as to which ones were chosen, and I like that they didn't over-nerf them either. They literally just brought them back in line with where they should be.
For equipment, we don't have anything planned at the moment. We will, of course, as you say, we will observe the data. We are like constantly observing what the hit rates and use rates of equipment are. And if something is an outlier so that it's both heavily used and super strong, then we will have to consider doing something. Or if something is outlier in the other direction, underused and weak, we will have to consider doing balance changes for that.
That all makes sense to me. So if something is overused and overpowered, that's where it gets a nerf, which is what happened with the last round. If something is underused and seemingly the hit rates are underwhelming as well, then that's where that piece of equipment would get a buff. And they like the equipment to be exciting, that people want to be able to get it, but they try and balance it appropriately. But ultimately, there is things that aren't identified in the testing phase. Once the equipment is in the hands of millions of players, they might come up with different use cases, which then makes it overpowered. And that's kind of what happened here as well, I think. Equipment was just such a brand new concept that they really couldn't think of every individual use case. But I do like that Petri says they're not going to be balancing equipment too regularly. It's really going to be observing the data, making sure they have enough data to make the right call on whether something needs tweaked or not.
And why the data gathering takes such a long time is that it's actually like takes a while to upgrade your equipment.
True.
And takes a lot of resources to upgrade your equipment. So we would want to avoid any hasty decisions. So if we have to do any nerfs to equipment, we try to do in such a way that it still remains very useful.
Which I think they did a good balance of in the last round of equipment balance changes, because any of the equipment that received a nerf, they were still very useful. It just brought them in line so that there was more variety across all of the equipment. They then talked about magic snacks with user experience designer Raphael, and he touched upon why they were even introduced in the first place.
Yeah, I think the main reason for the existence is that we wanted to make battling more fun, more exciting, and especially more rewarding for players. It's always more fun to go to the battle if your siege machines are full, but it can be hard for players to request clan castle reinforcement donations every time, and some players don't even know that they can reinforce their troops using raid medals.
True.
So
they
we
don't want
introduced
to.
the clan castle cake. And the same can be applied to a lot of other things like testing new troops or new equipment. It can be a bit challenging, but if you use the power pancake or the mighty morsel, you can go there and you can have these elements in their full potential and experiment like how fun they can be in their maximum level.
That makes it sound like the Mighty Morsel is their solution to allowing us to test hero equipment so that we can decide which ones we want to put ore into. I've said for quite a while, I think they need a testing ground for equipment, much like the super troops, because it's not like regular troops in the lab. You really have to work towards the ore, so it's good to know for you as an attacker, which ones do you want to put the ore into? It's not the same as gold or elixir. Maybe they'll still add something like that, but the way he's talking, it makes it sound like this is their solution for that. And I think it's a great addition. I really like the Mighty Morsel. I think that and the Clan Castle cake are probably my two favorites, but I do hope to see more of a testing ground area as well.
The training treat, I think, is just so good to be able to train your army right away. And I've seen some players talking about, oh, why heroes, they're still like, if they're like resting, they still need to wait for the time. But I think it's so good if you're like just farming as well. So you just like train your bunch of sneaky goblins or whatever it is. So I think it's really fun in that way because you don't have to wait, just like jump straight away into it.
That's pretty interesting as well. Obviously, it would be nice to have your heroes included in the training treat, but maybe then it would be a little bit too OP and it would counteract the training portion. Plus, I do quite like the idea that I think Ferry was getting at there, that you can explore with a different type of army with the training treat, where it doesn't include your heroes, whether that be a sneaky goblin farming army, kind of just mixing things up for people a little bit so they have variety in their attacks, which I don't necessarily think is a bad thing.
We know that players like to save their items, reserve them for that special moment, and we're okay with that. But with these specific items, we want to remove that pressure of like, should I save, should I use it now? We want them to be something that you can acquire and you can explore the benefits right away. You don't have that internal pressure.
I think that's important, actually, because when I first heard about Magic Snacks, I wasn't sure on the 24-hour expiration, but I think it is a good thing in this scenario. As long as we're going to be able to get them frequently enough, then it does stop you from hoarding magic items and feeling like you have to use it at the exact right moment. It sounds like it was designed as a, right, I've got one of these, I'm going to use it and just have fun. Which is, again, the more they can increase the amount of fun people can have in the game, that's clearly a good thing.
But I think slowly we are going to see like what are the other spots in the game that we can include them, always with that mantra of rewarding players for their engagement. Yeah, and we want to hear from the community. If you have ideas about what are the cool places that we can include these items, let us know. We're always hearing.
Ooh, that is interesting. Where could they add them to the game? Especially since their purpose is to reward active playing. Maybe the star bonus could actually be a good place because of the 24-hour expiration as well. You get the star bonus every day. You do a couple of multiplayer attacks. You can be rewarded with your magic snacks, and we would get them quite frequently. In terms of other places, though, that also reward active playing, I think it's a tricky one. For example, the challenge levels where they spoke before, I think chests would be a way better reward. If they were to put magic snacks there, it would have to be quite a few of them for that reward to feel good enough. I don't know, the star bonus is my best idea.
We hope that our players love the magic snacks as much as we do, and we would love to keep cooking new recipes for them. So at the moment, we have a lot of extra ideas in our drawers, but there's this constant fact from Clash of Clans that some of our best ideas, they came from the community. So now it's the moment to hear from them. How do they feel about the current set of magic snacks, and what are the new effects that they would like to see in the game? We are all ears.
One thing I would like to see for Magic Snacks, and I discussed this in my video yesterday where we broke down the Q&A on what we could expect in Clash of Clans for 2025, but I would like to see a Magic Snack that gives us use of our heroes whilst they're upgrading. We had the ability to do so with the previous Unlimited Heroes event, and I think it would be a perfect Magic Snack due to rewarding the act of playing. And it sounds like Clash of Clans is all ears when it comes to this topic.
Please leave your feedback down below or in our social channels, what you think about the episode, the topics we covered.
Ferry's just closing us out here, and in terms of feedback, I would say I really like these Inside the Builderhood episodes. They improve the transparency and communication towards us players, and I really like the topics that they covered today, so thank you to all of the team members. But if you do want to hear the Q&A breakdown on what we could expect Clash of Clans to be like in 2025, I have that video on your screen.